Hi there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. I was watching Attack of the Clones for the 123rd time the other day when it finally clicked. Count Dooku totally threw the Battle of Geonosis. There was no way the Grand Army of the Republic should have won that battle. I mean, I really should have picked up on this a long time ago because it's obvious. I even did an entire video called Everything Wrong in the Battle of Geonosis, where I completely scathed the Jedi's ill-advised tactics. But to be fair, when I made that video, I had not been captured by Dolphin Jet and experimented on, which clearly changed my cognitive behavior. Anyway, let me begin my analysis on why I think Count Dooku purposefully lost Geonosis by setting up the scene and talking about some important factors. See, the Confederacy of Independent Systems was made up of several corporate republics, like the Trade Federation and Techno Union. They had been steadily militarizing their trade fleets in the outer rim of the galaxy. Around 124 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Republic had created a free trade zone in the outer rim to encourage infrastructure and capital development to the region. This naturally attracted large corporations who were looking for cheaper places to manufacture things and also mine for resources. In the decades that followed, heavy manufacturing and industry gradually shifted outwards from the core of the galaxy, and the outer rim experienced a boom in growth and development. New hyperspace lanes were carved out and new colonies were set up. As the outer rim grew richer, the gangs and pirates that called the region home became more bold. While the core region of the galaxy was well serviced by Jedi counselors and judicial forces, and most larger planets also had planetary defense forces that could keep criminal elements at bay, the Republic didn't have the resources or the political incentive to patrol the outer rim of the galaxy with the same kind of effort. But the Trade Federation and other corporate entities were more than happy to step in that role. Without taxation to cut into their profits, they were able to create large security forces like the Trade Federation Defense Fleet, which was used to settle disputes, protect the Trade Federation's various interests, and also, if necessary, serve as an enforcer for debt collection. As the Trade Federation and Outer Rim became more prosperous and powerful, the Senate and Chancellor Valorum began floating around ideas about repealing the Free Trade Zone, which ultimately led to the invasion of Naboo. The Trade Federation had militarized a good portion of their fleet at the time and had also secretly created a giant droid army. This was 10 years before the Battle of Geonosis. And although the blockade of Naboo ended in defeat for the Trade Federation, they had shown that they had the ability to create a massive army. When Obi-Wan Kenobi stumbled onto the secret droid foundries of Geonosis, the growing Separatist movement, along with the Trade Federation and its new corporate allies, had been preparing a massive army for quite some time. On the ground, ready to be deployed in defense of Geonosis, the droid army had over 1 million B-1 battle droids, 100,000 super battle droids, 3,000 droidicas, 7,500 spider droids, and 4,100 Hailfire-class droid tanks. On top of that, in orbit, there were an additional 4 million B-1 battle droids that were being stored in Lucrehulk freighters. You remember those giant core ships trying to launch during the battle? Those are the command modules of the same ship that was used to blockade and invade Naboo, the Lucrehulk. Now, in support of this massive fleet of ships were an additional 286 hard cell transports. While not exactly military vessels, they were armed and around the size of a small frigate. On top of that, the Geonosians had thousands of Nantex fighters protecting Geonosian airspace. This was a massive army and fleet. And even after the Battle of Geonosis was over, the CIS forces that escaped managed to spread across the galaxy, and it took the Galactic Republic several years to track them all down and defeat them. Now let's take a look at what the Grand Army of the Republic brings to the battle. On the ground, facing over 1 million droids, in addition to the 4 million in space, the Grand Army brought just under 200,000 clones, which were carried by 2,000 gunships and supported by 2,000 ATTE Walker tanks and 100 self-propelled heavy turbolasers. Not only did this force have to land in a giant open space, they had to assault a heavily entrenched enemy position, and in order to get there, they had to cover a few kilometers worth of open space. The B-1 battle droids that made up the bulk of the Separatist Alliance army were inferior to the average clone in almost every battle scenario, except one. You see, the Separatist droids were built for large parade formation battles in open space. In these types of battles, the B-1's narrow profile and robotic nature and lack of any tactical knowledge was well suited for this terrain. The clones, on the other hand, who were highly trained, had no terrain that they could use to create a tactical advantage. They basically had to charge forward to the depths like battle droids. It was estimated that a clone had to kill around 100 B-1 battle droids to justify the extremely high cost and time it took to fully train a clone. Now, the clones were always going to be outnumbered. That's how they were designed. They were supposed to be better than a Separatist battle droid, but that also meant that the clones had to take every opportunity to give themselves a tactical advantage, and in an open battlefield like this one, there was no advantage for the Grand Army of the Republic. On top of that, you had 100,000 super battle droids who were far more heavily armed and much more suited for these type of open field battles. The clones were very heroic and they didn't retreat and they willingly went into battle, but at the end of the day, they were clearly outnumbered. Count Dooku, who was no fool, could have easily deployed the additional 4 million battle droids from orbit and wipe out the entire Grand Army of the Republic in one fell swoop. But if we look at the conversation between Count Dooku and the Trade Federation, Count Dooku is clearly trying to mislead them.
The Jedi have amassed a huge army. We must send all available droids into battle.
There are too many.
First, Count Dooku pretends to be surprised by the appearance of this massive clone army.
How could the Jedi come up with an army so quickly?
Despite the fact that he was the one who helped Jedi Master Sifo Dyas put in the order for the clones with the Kaminoans. He even chose Jango Fett to be the template after witnessing the Mandalorian kill several Jedi with his bare hands in Legends. Dooku, who knew exactly how many clones were on the battlefield, 200,000, tries to convince the less experienced Trade Federation commanders that there are way too many clones for them to fight. When the Trade Federation representative says, "Let's deploy all the rest of the droids," Dooku quickly answers that it's hopeless and the battle is already lost. Not only were the clones outnumbered 25-1 by the Separatist droid army, their fleet was also pretty inadequate as well. Aside from several wings of V-19 Torrent fighters and a few Delta 7 Aether Sprite Jedi fighters, the only naval presence the Republic had were a dozen Acclamator-class assault ships. We recently talked about these ships in our Role of Republic Naval Vessels video. The Acclamator was an armored transport, but it was lightly armed. It could easily be taken down by flak and anti-aircraft fire. During the Battle of Ryloth later in the war, the Republic ground forces had to neutralize enemy AA guns before the bulk of the forces could land. During the Second Battle of Geonosis, the Republic used gunships to keep the Acclamator safe from enemy ground fire. But during the First Battle of Geonosis, every transport makes it to the ground safely somehow. There were over 60 Lucrehulk battleships in orbit, along with thousands of Nantex territorial starfighters. Where the hell were they? I know the Lucrehulk battleships are just modified freighters, but they're bristling with weapons emplacements, and one Lucrehulk is almost 5 times longer than the much smaller Acclamator. On top of that, in Legends, the planet of Geonosis was bristling with orbital defense cannons, which actually makes a lot of sense. Geonosis was a major strategic target. It had multiple droid foundries, and you would think they would have some kind of orbital defense in place in case a giant army arrives, because what they were doing was clearly illegal. Now, why would Count Dooku purposely mislead the inexperienced Trade Federation leaders? Well, he probably knows most of the details in Darth Sidious's plan to destroy the Republican Jedi. In order for Palpatine's strategy to work, they can't really have the war end in one quick decisive battle over Geonosis. If the GAR was defeated at the Battle of Geonosis, the Separatists would be forced to march on Coruscant and force the Republic to surrender. Palpatine would lose face and maybe even lose control over the Republic. What Sidious actually wanted to do was unite the galaxy and create a massive military to rule it. With the Ruusan Reformation essentially demilitarizing the entire Republic almost 1,000 years ago, the only way to increase the military size or even to create a military would be to prolong the war and make the Separatist threat seem real. They needed the war to drag on for several years. During this time, Palpatine could slowly erode the checks and balances that kept the government functioning, while simultaneously gathering more power in the executive branch and expanding the size of the Grand Army of the Republic. As the war went on, longer and more Jedi would die, leading the clones into battle, and eventually, with the war in full swing, the majority of the Jedi Order would be deployed and, more importantly, separated across the outer rim of the galaxy, where they would be easy pickings for Order 66. Even after the Battle of Geonosis, Count Dooku is still toying with the Republic. He clearly still has them outnumbered in both navies and armies. As a matter of fact, in the Clone Commando novels, many of the clones who understand the situation wonder why the Separatist droid army doesn't just launch a massive offensive and crush the Republic. Now, in the end, only the clones were trained with military minds. They understood that the war didn't make sense, while the Jedi, either in arrogance or ignorance, didn't realize that their foe was purposely drawing out the war. So that is our analysis of the Battle of Geonosis and why we think Count Dooku purposely lost that battle. But let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.